free agency before the draft. Does free agency excite you once you guys find some money and get everything all squared away? Or we're at the combine and it generally is about the draft, but free agency is first.
Yeah, and it's funny. I got asked that question earlier. People have different opinions as to maybe you should flip the order or something like that. But I always say, well, we got to deal with it. So does every other team, and so it's just another challenge to try and overcome and think about it that way. But I would say also the combine is a great space to talk with agents and meet people and learn about things. So it is a little bit you got eyes on both the draft and free agency at the same time. But ultimately, again, you just have your needs, you have your vision for your team this year and next year, and trying to figure out the ways to accomplish those goals with all your channels, and one of them is the draft, and we're here to do that.
Paul touched on one of the big challenges that you've got. If published reports are accurate, the team's over the cap by a fair amount, maybe $16 to $20 million. What are some of the levers you can pull to get under the cap? And then part two of that is, philosophically, how do you feel about restructuring contracts so that you end up pushing money forward, like some teams do, and you can kind of maybe sometimes do that, but you pay the piper later?
Agreed.
How do you feel philosophically about that?
Yeah, it's the beautiful puzzle.
Right?
It really is. And there is no one answer. It's just like people ask about your draft philosophy, draft for need or talent. There is no single answer. You have to think about the big picture. But in terms of contract structure and things like that, I don't want to get too specific.
Of course.
But I do think you think about things not just in a 1 year, but hey, we're trying to win a championship, you got to give yourself multiple cracks at it, right? The oblong ball, there's fate and things like that. So you want to give yourself 3 to 4 really good chances and then hope you win 1 or 2. And so doing that means you got to be responsible in the long term. And eventually, again, that credit card bill comes due if you do too much irresponsibly. But again, if you think about it theoretically and strategically, there's ways to kind of cushion those blows, and that's what we're, if we get in that place, that's what we'll try and figure out.
It is one of those ways so that if you do restructure and push money forward, it's on players you feel really, really confident about.
Exactly right.
That you're not going to find yourself in a position where 2 years later you're looking to make a really damaging, potentially cut or trade of that player.
Exactly right. I think one of the first things my old boss, Brian Hampton, taught me, he's giving a talk about salary cap, and he's like, how I can be really good at salary cap? Get good players that, perform with their contracts, and it's not more difficult than that. So that's exactly right, and you just want to make sure that the risk you're taking is good risk, but that's everything. That's in the draft. That's in hiring me. It's everything we do in this business.
Now that you've had a chance to look at the team that you have now, just the incarnation of what it is now, what do you like about what you have now?
One of the things that jumps out is just the core pillars in the locker room. I think leadership is something that's not easy to find, and this team has had really great players, great leaders, homegrown, really great members of the community, great members of the organization. That's first and foremost. You look at both sides of the ball, there's playmakers. You can work with a lot of playmakers. That's what it takes. You talk about a young guy like Justin Jefferson. Yeah. A lot of teams here would love to have him. And so, I think, they're just, as you get deeper in the roster, you appreciate the more established places, but you also appreciate some of the depth guys, the guys that you see maybe have something in them to be more. That makes, I think learning your team and understanding it at its really base level helps you do your job, because maybe there's a need that you don't need to fill. Maybe it's already in your house and it's already there. So that's kind of some of the learning experience that's been happening. It's been great.
And then with just offensively, what you have now with those bookending tackles, you got Darris on to his second year. O'Neal might be the best right tackle in the NFL. With Cleveland, you guys had that, but then faced injuries. In San Francisco, I think McGlinchey, you guys drafted McGlinchey, right? And at right tackle, and you had good bookenders. Right. So, what a great foundation off which to start, having bookending tackles like that.
Absolutely. You sure you haven't studied team building?
I don't know, man. If you like me that much, can I ask about Kirk? I'm playing.
No, you're exactly right. I think you need a great offensive line. That's not something that's new. There's no football at the end of the day is a lot of meat and potatoes, blocking, tackling, and things like that. And offensive tackles are really integral for that. So we're happy to have those guys.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, General Manager, Minnesota Vikings, Combine, Indianapolis Charch.
I'm going to take the bullet on the Kirk Cousins question that I know you can't answer, the kinds of things that people really even want to talk about. But I want to bring you into a conversation Paul and I had last week that I think is relevant to Kirk and this organization.
That ought to be good.
By my count, there are 22 teams that have quarterback instability of some kind right now.
Sure.
The Vikings, at least for 1 year, are stable at the most important position. Can you just talk a little bit about stability, the quarterback position, and what Kirk brings in terms of that, at least?
I think it's a great way of putting it. I think that is a really great way of putting it. Kirk is a really good player. I think oftentimes, I don't know if it's a societal thing or it's an NFL thing, but you're so quick to point out the things people don't think they can do. But, here in our organization with KO, like, we're focusing on what guys can do, and that's not just Kirk. That's everybody. And I've been on other teams. Look, I was 10 minutes away from in a Super Bowl with, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
And, I don't know where you put that in the stability, but I think that's a stable situation in terms of the player he is. I think where you need to be is recognizing what skill sets that person has and how do you put the team around them to set that up for success. I think that's the best way to approach that issue.
Every time you reference the Niners in the Super Bowl, and I already said it to you once when you joined my radio show right after you got hired, is you guys traded for Emmanuel Sanders in October, basically for one game and one play, and then Shanny gets him open.
Yeah.
Oh my heavens!
Thanks for that.
That hurts.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I thought we were boys.
Coming up later, we're going to recap the 2009 NFC title game from New Orleans, just to even the playing field with Kwesi. Working with Kevin O'Connell, you mentioned KOC the last couple of weeks. What's been good about that? Like natural and real.
But to your point, it's just been natural. It's like we were not just longtime friends, longtime coworkers. I met his parents, and you see where he come from, and it's the same. We're both kind of like not very non-assuming people. Just again, all of our conversations have been great. The way we talk about ideas, the way we get excited about potential things, and how we're being. And again, we did a lot of this in the interview. I think the interview environment I set up was to just simulate what it would be like to have these conversations with them. So there was a kind of a set where everybody else wasn't talking for about an hour and a half, and it was just me and him. And so we did that with everybody to kind of simulate what it would be like, and it gave me a good sense for what it was going to be like. As we got the coaches in the building, you're even more impressed with the people he brings in, and it's the good I talked about earlier, good friend theory, good coach theory. Remember in your college, you met your college friends met your home friends, and they were immediately close because there's something that connects us all. And I think the thing that makes him a great coach and connects him to other great coaches I've seen on display, and the collaboration has been really easy. We've been in draft meetings together, and you would think we've been in operation together for a long period of time, aside from the fact that we've got a lot of stuff to do in a short amount of time.
It's a beautiful blend because we have taken what is old and made it new, but with new, we blended veteran presence in there with Donatel and Pettin and so on. And it never hurts when you pluck a super well-respected coach from the team to beat in the division who coached the outside linebackers and Mike Smith. I mean, you're making plays right now. We haven't even played game one yet. Holy cow, Kwesi. When you see Stefanski here at the Combine, do you think he's going to say to you, "Hey, Kwesi, lay off my free agents"?
You know what?
I looked at those names though.
The second I want to say it was right before I went in for the second interview. We have this group text for the exec group, and I was off it. It was just like that is the last conversation I've had. Yeah, I'm out. AB's a mentor and a friend, but he's a competitor. That's awesome. Hey, but no, I love those guys. I got to see AB earlier. That was a great moment. It was a big hug. Can't wait I'm gonna go talk to Glenn Cook later today. Just again, you got your NFL family, and it's great to go see those guys.
When you say AB, you're talking about Andrew Berry.
Andrew Berry, apologize.
General manager of the Cleveland Browns.
Yep.
And before we started taping, you had a fascinating story about how you met Andrew Berry for the first time here in Indianapolis at Combines years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell that story.
Yeah, I talked about it when I first got to Cleveland, but I had heard about him. Man, like, who is this guy? Like, you want to surround yourself with really smart people, and always wanted to meet him. And it was a time where I wouldn't say I'm the best person at networking, for example, and so not something I normally do. But I was standing in the elevator bank on the way up to the suites to go to workouts or whatever, and I look at his name placard, and I'm like kind of squinting, like obviously looking.
You're looking, right. You don't want to do that, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do that. It was probably the least the smooth thing I've ever done. But
That's awesome.
I did it. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you Andrew Berry? I always want to meet you. He's like, are you Kwesi? He's like, I've wanted to meet you. Yeah,
right,
it was
so he knew you.
Cool.
Okay.
He knew. Yeah, there were some coworkers that I had that worked with him in Cleveland, and obviously thought enough of me to say nice words. So we met, and we hit it off. But Man, there's a lot of great. Again, AB's a mentor of mine. John Lynch is a mentor of mine. I've been so fortunate, so blessed. I always say it. I'm here because I had great teacher. I'll give myself credit because I'm curious and I'm willing to work and learn. But man, I wouldn't be here without those great teachers.
Would you be here right now if it weren't for that elevator bank right over there?
Yeah.
All those years ago.
No.
I mean, is there a scenario where if you didn't happen to share an elevator with Andrew Barry, you wouldn't be the general manager of the Vikings today? Is that possible?
It's definitely possible. We could if I give me a pen and paper, I could work out those exact odds. But
wow.
I think you always look at that as a blessing and how fortunate you are in this life, and you don't take it for granted. I don't sit here thinking that I've invented anything, or I understand that there's both hard work but also good fortune that got me here.
You familiar with the duo Daryl Hall and John Oates? Hall and Oates. You Make My Dreams, Kiss on My List, the whole thing. It's why I go down that road. Is Daryl Hall met John Oates when they went to Temple University, and they were stuck in an elevator because there was a fire at Temple, and that's how they met each other.
Is that true?
And that's true. And then they became the greatest duo in the history of music. What are we on to? Are you Daryl or John? you got the mustache, but you're tall like Daryl.
You haven't heard me karaoke. I'm neither. I'm neither.
Bob Hagan.
Then you're John.
Bob Hagan, give it to us. Time for two more. As in questions for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Vikings general manager. Here's mine. Please forgive the Minnesota Timberwolves for what you saw on Friday night.
That's a bad introduction.
I wasn't there, but my sources tell me that you were there. Embiid and Harden and Maxey, the Kentucky kid, they hit it off immediately. Then they killed the Knicks over the weekend.
Yeah.
So this Wolves team's good. Yep. And Anthony Edwards, Patrick Beverly, Chicago tough. I mean, you're going to love this team the more you watch them.
Absolutely. I was texting my buddy Ethan Casson, who worked with me at the 49ers, and he was apologizing for the game. I was like, look, I think that Sixers team can do that to a lot of teams. I really like the young team. Anthony Edwards, Towns, as you said, they got a lot of good young pieces.
There's Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, I'm a big basketball fan. I can't wait to spend more time there as we go forward. But no, they're a great team, and it's funny. I was asking about the Target Center, and like it was 1999. That's KG. Like you forget basketball is such a star sport that some kid in New Jersey. I was watching those games and saw that. I really appreciate those teams with they had Spreewell and all those guys. Sam Cassell, man.
MP3 with Wally.
Yeah, Sam Cassell. I wish I could have adapted my game like his. I needed a little savvy to my game. I didn't have it. But,
so when you were in New Jersey as a Nets fan, right?
No, grew up over the bridge from Philly, so all of our sports teams were Philly.
But I mean, are you too young to remember Drazen Petrovic?
No, Drazen. Of course not.
He was tough, man. He was like one of just a few who could slow Michael Jordan.
He was incredible. It's again, it's unfortunate how he passed, but that's one of those guys people talk about. But you think about his impact. He ushered in, eras. The guys probably like Manu and people like that. You're the European, came after him. You probably give him a lot of credit for that. You make me want to go on YouTube and go.
Well, it's a lot. For drafting, it's a lot of inspiration we can draw from this conversation because we mentioned Jaden McDaniels. Nobody knew a lot about him out of college. Got those long arms, plays defense, can score. You find players like that. You find players like Manu Ginobili in the NFL draft, rounds 4, 5, and 6. Man, that's how you win it all.
No question. Manu, you talk about Manu. That's one of my favorites. I'm a lefty, so me and Manu, but he's one of the best playmakers. I'm glad he's up for consideration in the Hall of Fame.
Yes,
if he's
sir.
Not already been inducted. But you talk about those middle to late round picks. It's not just somebody seeing something in the player. It's also the environment they come into, the player development role, and having the coaches bought into what makes this player good and maybe how to train him best to get there. So it's not. I wish I could just sit here and tell you that in San Francisco it was all about George Kittle and knowing he was better than everyone else. A lot of that was John Embry working with him every day, hitting the sled, getting that route detail down, and taking the traits that he had and making him into the player he was.
Well, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw.
Of course.
Dre Greenlaw. That's a phenomenal pick. What was he, a fifth rounder?
Yeah. Greenlaw was was he 4 or 5?
Fred was third from
Fred
BYU,
was third,
right?
Correct.
Right, man.
So to your point, solid look. That's a linebacker guru, right? So you talk about what would have happened if I didn't meet AB in that elevator. Same thing with players. They come to certain situations, and that's where you see those outcomes. It's not every situation. So you got to set yourself up to build an organization and a culture that gets the most out of the results you get.
Last one for the GM. Go ahead.
So you grew up an Eagles fan.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like.
Yep.
Are you in the Cunningham to Mike Quick era? What was your era growing up as an Eagles fan?
Yeah, I started with the Cunningham, Buddy Ryan, blitzing defense, just hitting quarterbacks. That's what I grew up thinking. When I got to the NFL, I'll be honest, I worked with the Fangio Donatel scheme, and And because I was so used to like a Buddy Ryan attacking defense, I thought that's how defense was played. And
wow.
Now then you sit in a room and you think about defense, and there's multiple ways to get to it. And then I see the genius in what those guys do.
Yeah.
Looks completely different, but it's same genius level. But man, so many good memories. My first memories in football are due to the Eagles, and so Randall Cunningham, man, he's pretty special to me. If you ask anybody who went to college with me, you want to get me upset. Don't appreciate Randall Cunningham's skill set. That'd be probably the only way to take a smile off my face.
We remember him fondly here too, as you probably know.
MVP in '98.
I was.
So wait, we're running to 46. We're running the Buddy Ryan 46,
I don't know
and you heard it here first.
I don't know if we're going to 46, man. You know what? That missed field goal, I hurt with you guys too. I was rooting for you guys.
Which one?
With Randall.
It happens every other year.
2009. Yes.
It happened every other year. It's not going to happen anymore.
No, I was with you guys then.
Which one? The College Stadium? Against
No,
the Seahawks?
he's talking about Gary
98.
Anderson.
Oh, we're even.
I'm not trying to name.
No, we're even. Off the Emmanuel Sanders.
No, I'm not trying to name.
Right here.
He was a great player for a long time.
Great seeing you. Enjoyed the stay. Best of luck, and look forward to chatting with you down the road.
Thanks, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, GM of the Minnesota Vikings.